All right, The Batman. I really loved this movie, and I loved it for different purposes that I loved other Batman movies for. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, except for one part at the end where I'm going to talk about the ending, which I will give you a spoiler warning before that happens, so don't worry, but most of this is spoiler free. I will be posting a spoiler video on my other channel, Cosmic Warren, which if you haven't subscribed to that yet, please do so. I'll put a link in the description and maybe up here somewhere, but I talk about other movies, DC, Star Wars, and other pop culture movies in general, so if you haven't subbed to it, go do that. So in this film, you see a very raw Batman. In fact, he's not really Batman when we watch this film. He's Vengeance. In fact, I think he's only called Batman one time in the entire movie. For the most part, people call him Vengeance. And we see him become Batman. But we do see a raw Batman here. We see rage, right? We see a little lack of constraint in some parts. And we see him kind of mess up sometimes too, which is really great to see on screen. Now, we do see some of the constraint that is typical Batman, like no guns, no killing, and no spoilers, but, when some other characters are about to kill, he kind of gives them that little speech, don't become like them, right? Don't suffer like they do, don't kill, etc., etc. So you have like the roots of Batman there, but it's year two Batman, right? And something I love about this movie is just the beginning of it, the opening scene where he's actually doing a voiceover, which is really, really cool. And it really, really kind of sets the tone of the movie in a really, really cool way. And, you hear him say, I've been Batman for 2 years. Crime is up. Am I making a difference? Am I actually am I doing a good job? And it's really cool to see that kind of raw Batman. And in this film, really what we're seeing is Batman discover who Batman is. That's what it is. He's already became Batman, right? He's Batman already, but Batman changes, right? He has this idea of who Batman is in his head, and it changes over the course of this movie through the different events. So we really see him discover who Batman is, and I really, really love this movie for that, because I don't think this has ever been done before, and that's what Matt Reeve set out to do. Make a Batman movie that really wasn't like any other Batman movie, and he did a phenomenal job with it. Now, like I said, the opening scene was just phenomenal. It really started the movie off in the perfect way. And again, no spoilers, but one of the best scenes is seeing Batman coming out of the shadows, because it takes such a long time. You just see darkness, you see shadows, and then you hear footsteps, but they're very, very slow. They're not like doof, doof, doof. Here's Batman coming up, but it's doof, doof, doof. And there's this little clink to it, this little metal clink to it that almost sounds like cowboy boots, right? Like the spur of a cowboy boot. And I think it just adds so much to this. It makes it so much more menacing. Imagine if you were a villain and you just hear all of a sudden these footsteps and this little clink and this really deep, hard-hitting footsteps, and you just see shadows, and then after a little bit, after the anticipation builds up, there's Batman, right? And his Batman suit just comes out. It would be terrifying. And to watch this on screen is insane. It's insanely cool. It's one of the best Batman scenes I've ever seen in my life. And that brings me to the visuals of this movie. I think the visuals in this movie are a masterpiece. Really, I could just kind of watch Batman looking over the city from different rooftops for 3 hours long. Really, the scenes that we saw where Batman was doing that are awesome. Now, I truly love this film because to me, it was a very grounded Batman film. It's the most realistic Batman movie we've ever gotten. If Batman was a real life person, right? Bruce Wayne and Batman, I believe that this is how he would be. And I will truly always love this movie because of that. Now, this also shows us who Batman really is, the world's greatest detective, because this is a detective movie. And it has you on the edge of your seat the entire time, wondering what exactly is going on, which is another thing that I really liked about this movie. You never really guessed what was coming. Now, let's talk about the tone. Now, a lot of people will say that it's pretty slow at some parts, which, yes, call it what it is, right? It's slow at some parts. Now, the question here is, did you like those slow parts or did you not? Were you falling asleep? For me, I really, really love the slow parts. I think there's a lot of subtlety that went into this movie in between the different characters that I truly appreciated. Towards kind of the third act of the movie, Batman's, in a certain place, and cop comes up to him, Martinez, and he's like, hey, you shouldn't be here. And Batman just kind of looks at him and he's like, and Martinez is like, oh, all right. But Batman doesn't say anything. And he's like he's like, hey, don't touch that. Again, he like just turns and he's like, Martinez is like, oh, okay, you can touch it. Like, I love that. And you also notice that Batman doesn't really speak a lot when there's a lot of people around. Like, he talks to Gordon all day, all the time, whatever, no big deal. But when he's around a lot of people, you notice that he talks very quietly and doesn't speak very often. And I think, like, if you are Bruce Wayne disguised as Batman and you don't want people to know that you're Bruce Wayne, you're not going to talk a lot, right? And if you do talk, it is gonna kind of be pretty quietly, because you're not trying to get everybody to go, wait a second, you sound like Bruce Wayne. That's Bruce Wayne's jail. Like, they would figure it out. So I actually really enjoyed, like, the subtleties that they put into this movie. I really enjoyed it. And it's something that you pick up on, like, the second time you watch it. To me, it was just really good storytelling. Like, even during the slow parts. That's why I really liked the slow parts, because it was great storytelling. Now, there are going to be some people who think it was too slow and too long, and it's a long movie. I think if it was just a little, and I mean this, like, if it was just a little bit longer, it probably would have been too long for me. 3 hours is a pretty long time, but I think they cut it at a really good time. And the second time I watched this movie, I was trying to think of things I would cut, like what scenes would I cut, what's unnecessary. I wouldn't really cut anything, and so it's really hard to go in and say, like, yeah, it should be shorter, because I don't really think it should be shorter, but it is pushing that limit of too long. I will say that, but it was just at that mark for me, so it was okay for me. So I can see how some people definitely thought it was too long. Now, the cast, everyone's amazing. I mean, I think everybody performed at their best in this movie. I think it's top tier acting in this movie. Everybody's phenomenal, and I give them my highest praise for their acting in this movie. And I think that's all that really needs to be said about that. Like, truly, I give them my highest praise for their acting in this movie. Now, the characters, because acting can be good, but are the characters necessary? The characters are phenomenal in this movie, and how they interact with Batman and Bruce Wayne is phenomenal in this movie. The relationship between Jim Gordon and Batman, I don't think we've ever seen it like this on screen, and I loved it. I think it's the best interaction that we've seen between Jim Gordon and Batman, like, ever. I think it was amazing. And you even hear, like, some of the, not bickering, but, Batman's like, you trust me? And he's like, trust you? I've known you for 2 years. I don't even know who you are. Like, but at the end, like, he does trust Batman. He's like, yeah, you're the only one I trust, right? And it's just really cool to see that relationship. And then you see Batman praise Jim Gordon as well. No spoilers, but you see that as well. So that, to me, that was a big part of the movie, and it was really, really good. Really good. The Riddler's puzzles, they were pretty fantastic. It was not brutal. Well, yeah, it was brutal, I guess, like, because some people die in certain ways. It was a pretty bad way to go. That was like another raw thing. It's like you had the Riddler with his riddles, and they were good riddles, and you had, like, the way he killed people was pretty interesting. And you could kind of tell, like, it's kind of a madman, like, not so much like the Joker, but in his own mentally unstable way, which you could tell, in some scenes in the third act. Now, speaking of the Joker, a lot of people are comparing, first of all, Paul Dano did a phenomenal job as the Riddler. Nothing can take that away, but a lot of people are comparing the Riddler to the Joker, Heath Ledger's Joker. I think Heath Ledger's Joker still stands on top. I think he still reigns supreme as far as on-screen Batman villains go. Don't get me wrong, Paul Dano did an amazing job, and the Riddler is great in this movie, but I think for me, it's still Heath Ledger's Joker. I think it was just more of more of an impact in The Dark Knight. I think, he stole the show. And to me, the whole cast of this film, the Batman, is phenomenal. And Robert Pattinson, which we're about to get to, is phenomenal. And the Riddler adds a lot to it, and he's the main villain, and it's a lot. But to me, like, the Joker really just steals The Dark Knight. It's phenomenal. So I'm going to have to say I still like Heath Ledger's Joker more than the Riddler. But don't let that take away from anything that Paul Dano did with the Riddler, because it was phenomenal. Now, was this the best Batman movie ever? That's debatable. It's debatable. I don't think we can really compare this movie to other Batman movies, because this is very much a a Batman origin movie that we've never really gotten before. It's very different than any other film that we've gotten before, because to me, this actually, this ties with The Dark Knight and maybe even Batman Forever, because it's always going to have a spot in my heart, because it's the first Batman film I saw, or I should say it's the first Batman film I remember seeing. So that's always going to have a place in my heart. But it's so hard to compare these movies because they are so different. This was by far the best Batman origin movie, by far. It's phenomenal. It's way better than Batman Begins, way better. And I don't think we really need to compare it to The Dark Knight, because they are two very, very different movies, both of which I really appreciate for what they are. And they're very different, and I really like the fact that they're very different movies because they are different Batman. Now, Robert Pattinson, all the praise to him, because I think he did incredible. I think he nailed it. I think it's exactly what Matt Reeves wanted for this specific movie. Could he have been Christian Bale's Batman? I don't know, but he was perfect as this Batman. Perfect. And again, back to the whole grounded part, I think this is how Bruce Wayne would be, because you have a lot of people saying like, well, this is an emo Batman. Like, oh, this is an emo Bruce Wayne. Well, like, yeah, like it's showing us like the actual trauma that Bruce Wayne and Batman has gone through, like everything from losing his parents to fighting crime in the city, you know, for 2 years. And like he says in the beginning, crime is up, you know, am I even making a difference? Like it shows the realness of it. But I do think that given the events of this movie, by the end of this movie, he does seem to change, which I'm about to talk about. But I think maybe in the next Batman film, he could be a little bit more of an outgoing Bruce Wayne, you know, for reasons that will be revealed in the next one and that I won't talk about for, you know, spoiler reasons. I think that he could open up a little bit more and become more of that traditional Bruce Wayne that people know. But at the same time, I kind of like that he's not, you know, very much a traditional Bruce Wayne. So we'll have to wait and see what they decide to do with that one. Now, okay, ending. I'm going to talk about two different endings. I'm going to talk about a non-spoiler one, and then I'm going to give my thoughts on some spoilers, and I'll tell you when that's going to happen. But, ooh, I think this is the greatest Batman ending ever. Out of all the films, I truly love this ending. And I'm not talking about the entire third act. I'm talking about like the actual ending. I truly think watching Batman go through the events of this movie and getting his mindset at the very end of this movie and seeing who he's become was amazing. If you haven't seen this movie, I would go see it immediately, as soon as you can. If it's safe to do it, go do it, because I truly think it's an amazing film. Again, I don't know if it's the greatest Batman movie of all time, because I think it's very different, but I do think it ties with The Dark Knight for the greatest Batman movie of all time. So go see that. Now, okay, spoiler talk for the ending real quick. If you haven't seen it, now's your time to step away. Two things I really loved, and one I just kind of talked about, so I'll kind of talk about there. The Batman going from vengeance to the Batman, from vengeance to hope. That whole monologue at the end, that whole part where the bad guy says, "I'm vengeance," and Batman it clicks with him all of a sudden. He's been trying to be vengeance, and these guys think they're vengeance, and that's not who he wants to be, the same as a bad guy. He doesn't want to be the same as a bad guy, right? And then he realizes he's been going about Batman all wrong. And then he jumps in the water, and he goes, and he saves a new mayor, and he's saving all of these people. And it's so great how she's hesitant to take his hand at first, because he's a vigilante, right? He's running around. No one knows much about him. But then the little kid takes his hand, right? And he pulls him out, and he pulls the mayor out. And then everybody follows him. And all of a sudden, he's their ally. And he's this beacon of hope all of a sudden. And then that final scene where he's holding that lady and he takes her and she's getting airlifted and she's like, wait. And she puts her hand on his arm. And he realizes in that moment what he can be. Hope. He can be hope for the city. He doesn't need to be vengeance. He needs to bring hope to Gotham, and that's how he's going to be the Batman. That whole scene right there, to me, was the best Batman scene ever. I loved it, and one of the best scenes ever. And then the Riddler. The Riddler used Batman, and I love that. That whole part where he's in jail, where he's sitting there going, I couldn't have done it. I don't have the strength, but we did this together. And Batman, he's like freaks out. He's like, no, you're a criminal. You're a murderer. You're insane. And then the Riddler is like, no, what are you talking about? We're friends. Like we did this together. And he like has kind of like a mental breakdown. That was insane. To me, I was like, dang, the Riddler used Batman. That's crazy. And that really was like, I think that was a pivotal Batman movie moment right there. I think that was pretty intense. So yeah, that is my review of the Batman. I loved it. I loved pretty much everything about it. It could have been a little shorter, but again, I don't know what I could have taken out to make it any shorter. So all in all, one of the best Batman movies of all time. Is it the best? I don't know. I don't think we need to make that decision. We can just say it's one of the best of all time. Everyone was fantastic, and Robert Pattinson did an amazing job. Can't wait to see what number 2 is going to be like. So let me know what you think about the Batman down below if you've seen it. And if you haven't, let me know how excited you are to go see it. So until next time, catch y'all later. Woof woof.